What started off as a really neat concept about sneaking into your neighbor's house would soon be ruined by janky physics and graphics. Today I'm going to be talking about Hello Neighbor and how with each update that would come out, it would keep getting worse and worse. Here we have the pre-alpha, which came out on September 29th, 2016, and it was used to show the mechanics of the game and how the game is intended to play out. The objective was simple. All you had to do was infiltrate the neighbor's house and try to go into the basement by solving puzzles. The door is locked and you have to find a way to open the lock, figure out the code, and take off the board from the door using a crowbar or hammer. While the pre-alpha only had you running around the first floor of the house, the overall ambience and sounds were really terrifying. Getting seen by the neighbor would mean that he would chase you around the house while some terrifying music would play. You would be able to find the code by using a UV light and pointing it at the back of a picture frame. After you've collected all the items, you're able to open the basement door and take a look inside. The ending of the pre-alpha wasn't anything special as the basement itself was just an empty room as it was only the pre-alpha. The neighbor's AI is advanced and will adapt to the way you play, meaning if you go through the front door too many times, the neighbor will place bear traps or lock the doors. Moving on to the Alpha 1 build, the game opens up with a cutscene that shows the player driving up to his new house where he will be moving in. The neighbor is then seen going up the stairs to his house and picking up a pair of binoculars where he starts spying on the neighbor moving in next door. Upon being able to take control of the player, you are given 4 tasks that you have to complete. These include turning on the electricity, checking inside, move stuff inside, and take a nap. Once you have done all of these, you'll be able to sneak into the neighbor's house, which you will have noticed is a lot bigger. To get into the basement this time, you'll have to complete a series of puzzles around the house. To begin, you will have to turn off the furnace as this will freeze the shark that is on the second floor. Next to the shark, there is a bell that you'll need to pick up and bring to the room where there is a grave. Calm down, it is not real. Place the bell next to the grave and take out the shovel and dig up the teacher mannequin from the grave. You can now bring her up to the classroom and place her near her desk. This will allow the player to be able to complete the maths problems that are on the board and receive the toy gun. Head over to the shooting range and place the gun on the holder and shoot the targets. You need 3 points in order to receive the key that will allow you to proceed to the next section of the house. Make sure to grab the jackhammer that is found in the bathroom downstairs as you need it to tear down the brick wall. The key is found next to the bear and this will allow you to unlock the basement. To get the boards off, go and collect the hammer in the garage. Much like the pre-alpha, there is no basement, but instead you get a cutscene with the neighbor who catches you. Alpha 2 was the best build of the game by far, and this was the build that was supposed to show off what the final product is. The game lets you choose between playing through the story or jumping straight into the action. For this video, I will be unveiling the story. Similarly to Alpha 1, the player is moving into a new house as you see his car driving down the road and stopping next to the house. Once again, you'll have to complete the objectives to be able to unlock the house. After moving your stuff into the new house, the player will fall asleep on the sofa, triggering a cutscene where the player experiences distorted visions of the neighbor taking over the house and barricading and locking multiple doors. The player wakes up outside his actual house on a blue couch, startled after hearing a scream. The player will walk up to the neighbor's house and see the neighbor is locking and closing the basement in a hurry. Curious, you open the front door, a hat stand falls, and the neighbor hears it. You hide in a wardrobe to prevent him from seeing you. After he goes back into the living room, hide in the wardrobe which is down the hallway by a false wall. After this, you are thrown into the main game where you are free to explore as you wish. Compared to Alpha 1, the house is smaller and the player is given a proper model. You may also have noticed that the red key that is needed is on the neighbor's belt. Now, there are easy ways for you to be able to grab this key. You can make him chase you outside and take it from him when he turns back to the house or in front of you. This will allow you to unlock the room where you'll find the crowbar to unlock the basement door. To get the keycard, you have to run outside to the back of the house where you'll find the shed. Next to it, there is a power generator that you need to turn on. Activating a switch near the bedroom will unlock the second floor temporarily, so you have to be quick before it closes back up again. You can break through the windows upstairs and climb to the roof where there is a hole. Dropping down would allow you to collect the keycard, which is the final piece of the puzzle. In this build, a basement is accessible. The player enters the basement with intense carnival-like music. The shadow of what most likely a child can be seen for a split second down the stairs. After running down the stairs, the player will enter a room. The room is littered with candles surrounding a mannequin, a baby crib, and a mattress/bed. If the player attempts to go through the slightly open door, the game will end. I wanted to bring this up too. There is a way to be able to see the player by using the ghost cheat, which obviously isn't the canon way to see him. Similarly, you can use this cheat to take a look at the basement in its entirety. The original plan was for it to be a labyrinth where you would have to solve puzzles as the neighbor would be chasing you, like in Tiny Bill's trailer video. The player is in his car driving to a new neighborhood, which is called Alpha 3. The player turns right into a side road as distant city lights are seen on the dark horizon. The full size of the neighbor's house is shown. Alpha 3 is where Hello Neighbor started to see a decline as the house is now 10 times bigger than when it originally was and can only be played during the night. The devs done this as there were a lot of missing textures. One important thing to remember is to collect the flashlight right from the beginning and find the magnet which is hidden behind the fence. I ended up having to do this all in the dark. Not to mention that annoying jump to get to the golden apple frame that you need to do after collecting the magnet. You can now magnetize the blue key that will allow you to unlock the upper floors. I also forgot to mention the fact that you can grab a golden key right above the front porch when you enter the house by hitting the switch with a box. Upon doing so, you can go into a hole in the room and you'll find yourself with the key card in the cabinet. This will be needed later to unlock the basement. You need to break the window and head outside where you can climb up a ladder and reach the roof. Stacking two boxes together, you can climb into the hole in the roof and collect the crowbar. Now you have everything you need to unlock the basement. After unlocking the basement door and entering, the player is transported to a very bright version of the neighbor's living room. There are two doors, both locked. Through one door is part of a QR code, behind the other door is a shadowy figure. In the corner of the room, the neighbor holds his hands to his face and cries. When the player goes near him, the game will end. The player is in their apartment as someone repeatedly knocks and bangs on the door. Eventually, a letter is slipped through the door, which is most likely an eviction notice forcing the player to leave. The house itself is just a mess. It took me a while to actually figure out what I had to do or where I had to go the first time I ever tried to go through this. It's the same house from Alpha 3 except now more has been added. The house is huge and the player is just placed in with no instruction whatsoever and you're just expected to know what you're doing. The neighbor is hardly even a factor in the game as he can't even get to certain parts of his own house, so the whole AI boast was basically for nothing. To get started, remove the box from the yellow car trunk right outside your house and grab the red key. You won't need this till the end, so just drop it somewhere if you need inventory space. The same annoying jump that was in Alpha 3 is still here, but this time a bonus platform has been added to make it easier. This time the magnet is also found behind the painting and you have to use items to turn on a switch, but with the bugs and physics it seems impossible. You can then magnetize the blue key just like the previous alpha. You can go around the back of the house and use two boxes to stack up to a small window in a shaft. By throwing a small object through it, you can open the elevator and gain access to the upper floors. The crowbar can be found behind the door with the blue lock in the room behind the wardrobe, but it will be hot, so you have to use the magnet to pick it up and cool it off. Go up until you find an opening in the elevator shaft and turn off the generator. This will be needed for later. Ignore everything else seen in this room, as most of it for now is just show and tell. Go back downstairs and stack boxes to get into the door that is high up. This will get you into the room where you can start the train that goes around the house. Wait for the train to do a full loop and hop on and take control of it. You need to stop the train right before a pipe in order to be able to complete a jump. Make sure to bring the red key with you this time and an umbrella as needed. Jump to a section that is split up from the house and use the red key on the red lock to unlock the door and enter a minigame. This minigame is called Fear and it starts off with the player being extremely tiny in some sort of storage closet and having to parkour across a variety of items. Well, because of how clunky the controls and physics are, it isn't the greatest to play. Just a minigame is a whole puzzle in itself, there are multiple sections where trial and error is in place. Forgetting to collect the dots or losing all of the paper planes means that the player has to restart the entire minigame, which just ends up not being enjoyable. The whole point of this minigame is to unlock the ability to double jump. This is needed in order to be able to get past the basement and complete the alpha. Go back to collect the crowbar, which should hopefully have cooled down by now, and make sure to check the freezer, which was the reason that the generator on the upper floors had to be turned off. Unlock the basement door and head on through to the basement. Complete the jumps in the basement and avoid the neighbor. The ending of this alpha shows the player leaving his apartment. Now it's time for what you came for, the full release. The introduction shows 13-year-old Nikki Roth kicking a ball down the street. The player is then dropped into the game to chase the ball down the street. The trees on either side of the road plastered with missing posters. After running to a flatter part of the road, the player reaches the ball but is startled by the sound of screaming coming from the house across the street. Filled with curiosity, he approaches the neighbor's window to see him lock the basement. The person screaming and being locked in the basement is Mr. Peterson's son, Aaron Peterson. Mr. Peterson sees him and catches him leading to the next sequence of events where he is seen hiding the red key, which is for the basement. Act 1 is a recreation of Alpha 2. This is because the developers consider Alpha 2 as a training version that would serve as the basis for a full game tutorial, which would later become Act 1. The house has the same concept, but there's a few minor changes in terms of design and certain placement of items. In my opinion, I generally did not like the new animation style and would prefer the older ones from the previous versions of the game. The physics are still an absolute mess, and one big problem I encountered was having to parkour by using the boxes. The boxes would just break and often send me flying, and this was very problematic as you'll have to stack boxes for the majority of the game. Start off by grabbing the boxes at the end of the house and piling them up on top of the furniture that is left outside and climb onto the roof. Break the windows and make your way onto the second floor. Take out the painting that is covering the next room over and grab the neighbor's car keys. In his car, you'll find the magnet that you need to use to create the crowbar and lockpick that can be used to get into the storage closet. You'll find the spanner that will unlock the stairs to the very top roof of the house. There is a hole you can jump through, and this is where the key is found. Use the key on the red lock and enter the basement as such. After entering the basement, you are greeted with a room that contains pipes and a washing machine. Interacting with the washing machine shows that there is a door that leads to another door. Behind that door is a mattress with lots of food and drink containers left everywhere and a fake scenery. Removing the fake scenery reveals the true basement, which is a massive maze full of doors and entryways. You will need to unlock as many of the doors as possible so that you can turn off the electricity. This will give the player access to the generator, which is keeping the rest of the basement locked. While you go past this door, the neighbor will chase you to the end of a maze where there is a door with 3 locks, causing you to get caught. This will probably be the last actual fun part of the entire game. After being caught in the basement, Mr. Peterson kidnaps Nikki and locks him in the basement in another room. Nikki eventually wakes up and footsteps are heard outside the room. Aaron Peterson unlocks the door, allowing Nikki to leave the room. After crawling through a ventilation duct, Nikki finds a ladder which leads to the surface. He climbs out of the basement bulkhead door and finds himself in Mr. Peterson's backyard. The house itself has greatly increased in size, with additional structures built on top of the roof. Tall wooden walls border the entire house, which can prevent Nikki from escaping easily. There are 3 routes that the player can take in order to be able to escape. These ways include unlocking the red padlock, removing the nails with a crowbar, or jumping on the trampoline. I personally always go for the trampoline. In order to unlock the gate with the trampoline, the player must use the water wheel to make sure water flows through all the pipes. The boiler in the room blocked off must be used to turn the water to hot. Also, in this act, if you're discovered by the neighbor, you might as well let him catch you, as there is no way to escape as you are trapped within the boundaries of the house. After all this, the player will need to use the valve in order to drain the room with the shock to reach upstairs, where you can unlock the doors from the inside and find the lever that turns on the boiler that unlocks the trampoline. The player must climb to the ladder in front of his house and use several boxes to boost, jump into the trampoline, and bounce out of the house. After completing puzzles and escaping the house, Mr. Peterson notices the protagonist is running away and starts to pursue him. Before he gets caught, a loud noise is heard that causes the neighbor to turn around and investigate. The protagonist becomes very fearful of him and doesn't dare to intrude again. Act 3 is the longest act in Hello Neighbor. It has the most puzzles, objects, and other stuff. 32-year-old Nicky Roth wakes up in his apartment. Loud knocks are heard and the letters slip through the door. Nicky picks it up and reads it. He discovers that he has been evicted from the apartment, leaving him no other alternative but to move back to his childhood home. As he pulls in, Mr. Peterson's former house is shown to be nothing but a burnt out husk. Visiting the remains of the house, Iggy begins hallucinating a shadow-like entity. The phone rings, and as he picks it up, the thing appears across the street. Believing he's just exhausted from the trip, Nicky curls up on the couch to sleep. During his sleep, he remembers the events of Act 1 in the form of Act 3, as the house is quite surreal compared to the house in the previous two acts. This version of the house seems to be him remembering certain parts of the place in full, but others in a jumbled up sort of way. And there you go, you have the same house from Alpha 4 again. Unfortunately, most of the house ties into the previous versions of the game, but some have become even more of a pain to play. Like the rest of the game, you're given zero instructions of what you need to do, but now the nightmare of a house is complete. There are now 3 fair mini-games, and the game continues to be extremely broken in terms of physics and placing items where you want them to go. As I said, the majority of this act is just the same as the house from the other alphas, so just to talk about some changes and the rest of the fear minigames. You must conquer 3 fear rooms that represent childhood fears. A grocery store, we learned in the book that he was left in the back room of a supermarket when he was 3. A school, where he was picked on before Raven Brooks. And a dark closet, presumably him being alone in book 3. In the supermarket minigame, placing items in the shopping cart is physically impossible. Overcoming these fears rewards him with the abilities of crouch invisibility, pushing Mr. Peterson once per break-in, and double jump respectively. All of these abilities will need to be obtained to continue the rest of the game. I will be honest, I have no idea how the red key is obtained. I only am able to do it by glitching the lever and then it unlocks the hatch where the key is. After gaining access to the basement via crowbar and keycard, Nicky will have to use his abilities. He uses the invisibility to hide from the thing, the double jump to hurdle the fence, and after reaching the exit door, he pushes Mr. Peterson away, slams the door, and locks it. He then runs down the same hall as in Act 1 with the door at the end, only this time, the door doesn't have 3 locks. Entering this room begins the finale. The act finale is the 4th and final act in Hello Neighbor. It is a relatively short act that predominantly features the giant neighbor and the thing. This concluding act brings together the main elements and challenges faced throughout the game. Nicky finds himself in a room filled with some furniture. He cannot turn back, and he is no longer in the basement but in a strange white land. Suddenly, the giant neighbor appears at the window, roaring and then smashing the room to bits. This destruction allows Nicky to access the rest of the land. He'll have to defeat the boss and climb onto the house he has on his back. You can do this by navigating over to the firework, ball launcher, and bow in order to send projectiles over to the neighbor. After 3 projectiles have been thrown at the neighbor, you can use a torso to climb on his back and enter the house. The final thing appears right after the missing poster room. Keep defending your young counterpart until the house completely shatters. Once this happens, all that is left is a white void with the house. Inside the house is the thing banging on the door to reach the neighbor. In the distance is a glowing exit door. After traversing the door, you'll find out that it was all a dream. Yep, exactly, all a dream.
Hey.
Hello Neighbor had the most potential back in the early alphas with just the easy goal of finding out what the neighbor is hiding in the basement. Ever since Alpha 3 and 4, people just hoped that the game would somewhat be like the original alphas, but with more updates that would come, it would just be more evident that it wasn't going to be the case. More and more players would soon go off onto other games and call it quits on this series, with YouTubers like Jacksepticeye completely quitting halfway through the full game. With that said, thank you for watching the video.